Welcome back to Almost Gone with Robert Routt. I'm Robert Routt, and this podcast is based on my memoir, Almost Gone: How Walgreens and the Pill Mills Nearly Took My Life. In episode one, I shared how something that started as treatment slowly became something much more dangerous. Today, I want to pull the camera back and talk about the world around that prescription, because most of my story, it didn't happen in isolation. It happened during a time in Florida when pain medications seemed to be everywhere. The episode is called The Florida Pill Mill Era. There was a time in Florida when pain management clinics were popping up all over the place. Some people called them pain clinics, other people called them pill mills. And for a lot of people, the line between treatment and trouble got blurry fast. People were hurting, people had injuries, people had back pain, neck pain, surgeries, accidents, chronic pain, and real problems they were trying to manage. A lot of people did not walk into that world looking to become dependent on anything. They walked in looking for relief, and that was me. I was not trying to destroy my life. I wasn't trying to become an addict. I was trying to deal with the pain and keep moving forward. And when you're in pain and someone in a white coat gives you an answer, you want to believe that the answer is safe. You want to believe the system is watching out for you. You want to believe that if a doctor writes that prescription and a pharmacy fills it and your name is printed on the bottle, then it must be okay, right? But during that time, Florida became one of the places people talked about when they talked about the prescription drug crisis. People were driving from other states into Florida looking for prescriptions. That sounds crazy, right? But back then, it was happening. And here's the part that still gets me. Public health reports later showed that in 2010, Florida had 98 of the top 100 doctors in the country who were dispensing the highest amounts of oxycodone directly from their offices. 98 out of 100. When I first learned that stat years later, I was stunned. But part of me wasn't surprised because I had lived through it. Think about that this is not a small problem. It's not like one bad apple. It's not like one doctor making one bad decision in one town. That is a system running wide open. And when you're the patient inside that system, you don't always see it that way. You don't see the stats. You don't see the reports. You don't see the warning signs, the flashing red lights. You see pain, you see a doctor, and you see a prescription. You see a pharmacy, and you see your name printed on that bottle. And you tell yourself, this must be okay. That is one of the most dangerous parts of prescription medication dependence. It could start at a place that looks official. It could start with paperwork. It could start with a doctor's visit. It could start at a pharmacy counter. And it could walk into your life wearing a white coat. And because it looks legitimate, it could take longer to admit that something has gone wrong. For me, the medication didn't feel dangerous at first. At first, it felt like help. It took the edge off, it made the pain easier to manage. It made it feel like I could function. And that's what makes this so hard to explain to someone who has never lived it. In the beginning, it may seem like it's working, but slowly the line starts moving. What used to be enough ain't enough anymore. What used to feel optional starts to feel necessary. And what started as pain relief becomes something your body expects, and then something your body needs, and then something your body demands. And by the time you realize how much control it has, you may already be in deeper than you ever imagined. Looking back now, I can see things I couldn't see back then. I can see how dangerous it was. I can see how fast it happened. And I can see how many people were caught up in the same trap. And I can see how hard it was to admit that something prescribed to me was now hurting me. During the Florida pill mill era, the system was broken in ways I didn't fully understand at the time. Eventually, Florida had to crack down. The rules started changing. Pain clinics were watched more closely. Prescription monitoring became a bigger part of the system. The doctors and the pharmacies had more pressure on them, and the flood of pills, they started getting attention. But here's the problem. By the time the system started fixing itself, the people inside the system were already wounded. A law could change, a clinic could close, a pharmacy could change its policy, a doctor could disappear from the picture, but the person who became dependent doesn't wake up the next morning free. The body still wants what it wants. The mind still bargains with you. The shame is still there. The family damage is still there. And the fear is still there. And for me, by the time people started talking more seriously about pill mills and prescription monitoring, I wasn't thinking about policy. I wasn't reading public health reports. I wasn't studying what Florida was doing wrong. I was just trying to survive on my own life. And if you've ever been there, you know survival doesn't leave much room for understanding the big picture. That's why I wanted to talk about the Florida pill mill era in this episode. Because when people hear the word addiction, they sometimes think the story begins with someone making reckless choices. But that's not always how it begins. Sometimes it begins with pain, and sometimes it begins with an injury. Sometimes it begins with trust. You trust that the people meant to help you are protecting you. And when that trust fails, real people pay the price. The families pay the price. The parents pay the price. The children pay the price. And communities pay the price. And some people never make it back. And that's the hard truth. My story is personal, but it's not only personal. I lived through a time in Florida when a lot of people were getting pulled into the same storm. Some survived, some didn't. Some families are still grieving. Some people are still trying to rebuild their lives. And if you're listening to this and part of your story sounds like mine, I want you to know something. I understand the shame. I understand the confusion. I understand looking back and asking, how did I get here? I understand wishing I had seen the warning signs sooner. And I understand wondering how something that started its treatment turned into a nightmare. But I also know this: shame does not have to be the end of my story or your story, because it's not the end of my story. My story got very dark. There were moments when I was almost gone, but I'm still here. And if there's one reason I keep telling this story, it's because I know someone listening may need to know that they can recover, if that recovery is possible for them also. A person can lose a lot and still rebuild. A family can go through pain and still find healing. A life can look broken and still have purpose. That doesn't mean the road is easy. It doesn't mean there are no consequences. It doesn't mean everything goes back to the way it was, but it does mean the story can continue. And sometimes telling the truth is where the new chapter begins. Thank you for listening to episode 2 of Almost Gone with Robert Routt. If this episode spoke to you, or if you know someone who has struggled with prescription medication dependence, addiction, chronic pain, or recovery, please share it with them. Please follow the podcast and leave a review and help these stories reach the people who need them most. This podcast is not medical advice. It's my personal story of survival, faith, family, recovery, and second chances. In the next episode, I'll talk about when my family began to realize something was wrong. Because an addiction don't just affect the person taking the medication, it affects everyone who loves them. And if you're listening today and wondering whether you've gone too far, whether you've made too many mistakes, and whether too much damage has been done, I'm asking you, don't give up, because I was almost gone and I'm still here. Your story may not be over yet. This is Almost Gone with Robert Routt. Thank you for listening.